Even when you love someone deeply and value them deeply, it can be really challenging to express warmth if there's unresolved conflict in the relationship. Hi, everybody. This is Greg from Heart Tools, where we make it simple to build great relationships. And there is a basic relationship principle that what you don't talk out, you will act out. If there is a problem in the relationship and you're not addressing the problem by communicating, then what happens is your behavior is going to change. And that is almost always true of conflict. If there's conflict in a relationship, and you don't talk it out, you will act it out. And one of the first things that will happen is you will lose your warmth in the relationship. There will not be those warm nonverbals. You'll stop making eye contact. There won't be warmth in your voice. You won't be smiling. All of that will disappear if there's unresolved conflict in a relationship. And here's why that happens. It's really hard for our hearts to do two opposite things at the same time. The writer of Ecclesiastes tells us there's a time and a place for every purpose under heaven. So there's a time to weep and there's a separate time to laugh, but the heart can't do both at the same time. There's a time to mourn and a time to dance, but the heart can't do those two opposite things at the same time. When there is unresolved conflict, your heart moves into a protection mode. It pulls back because when there's conflict, something you love is being threatened. And so you may be feeling a little bit of anger, you may be feeling a little bit of fear, you may be feeling a combination of both, you may be feeling a whole lot of both. And that's perfectly appropriate when something you love is being threatened. But that's a time to kind of pull back and figure out what to do to protect a relationship or protect yourself or someone or something you love. So it's a pulling back experience, while warmth is a moving forward and connecting experience. And your heart can't do both of those at the same time. So even if you are in a great stage 2 relationship where you're connecting deeply, or a great stage 3 relationship where you're journeying together, or a great stage 4 relationship where you're healing intimately and there's good stuff going on, when unresolved conflict pops up in the relationship, and it's going to in every relationship from time to time, that's just the nature of life. But when it pops up, even in those great relationships, it's really going to be hard to express warmth because the heart has a hard time protecting itself and connecting, doing opposite things at the same time. So here's a simple step to practice to protect those relationships. And that is just to notice when you've lost your warmth and to ask yourself, is there an unresolved conflict that's causing me not to be able to express warmth towards this person that I care about? And by the way, the people you're in relationship with may actually notice it first. We experience this all the time or see this all the time, right? When someone says, hey, what's wrong? And the other person just says nothing. And the reason the first person said what's wrong is because they've noticed that all the warmth has disappeared. And so in that case, what we need to practice is we need to practice every time someone says to us, hey, is something wrong or is everything okay? Before we just, pass over it and not talk it out so that we continue to act it out. We need to just pause and think, there's probably one of two things happening here. Either I'm feeling overwhelmed, as we talked about in the video last week. There's some pain that's popped up, and that's why I've lost my warmth. Or there's some unresolved conflict. So we need to practice pausing when someone asks what's wrong, trying to figure out why our nonverbals have gone away. And if it is unresolved conflict, just say, yeah, I think there's some things that we need to talk about that would be really helpful to me. Let me say two more things about warmth and conflict that are important to understand if you want to build great life-giving relationships. The first is, if you make a really good attempt at resolving conflict with someone and they just don't care to resolve the conflict, right? So if you're trying to resolve a conflict that they broke a promise, or that they crossed a boundary, or they lied to you, or they gossiped about you behind your back, and you try to resolve that conflict, and their response is, well, you're just going to have to put up with that. I don't care. I'm not going to resolve this conflict. This is who I am, right? If they don't want to resolve the conflict, even when you've made an appropriate, honest, vulnerable attempt to do it, you're probably going to lose your warmth whenever you're around that person, right? And that's going to have to be okay, because what's going to happen is that's the kind of person that's really appropriate for your heart to be in protection mode against. Someone who doesn't care if their behavior, their harmful behavior damages you, right? If they don't care about that, then you're going to be appropriately in protection mode when you're with them, and it's probably going to be challenging or impossible to express warmth to that person. And that's not a defect in your capacity to love. That's just being wise around harmful, destructive people. The second thing I'll say is we'll begin practicing the skill of resolving conflict a bit in stage 2 of relationship building, which is creating connection, and we'll continue to master it in stage 3 and stage 4 of relationship building. But conflict resolution itself is not a stage 1 skill. If you are on a first date with someone and you feel like, oh my goodness, I really need to know conflict resolution skills here, that's a sign that there probably shouldn't be a second date. If you're in the first 3 months of a friendship or the first 3 months of a romantic relationship and there's already a lot of conflict going on, that is way too much work for the beginning stage of a relationship. And those are probably people you need to avoid. You're not going to help yourself out or that person out by investing more time and energy in the relationship, because if there's that much conflict early on, chances are you're in relationship with a person who thrives off of putting other people off balance, shaming people, criticizing people, and creating conflict. The conflict is actually what they want to happen. And that relationship is going to become a black hole that just sucks all of the energy and life and goodness out of you. So that's a relationship that you need to avoid. So with this video, we actually have 2 different simple steps that you can practice depending on what situation you're in. When you're in stage 1 relationships, when you're with people who you're just getting to know, you can practice identifying when there's way too much conflict early on. And instead of getting sucked into it, just minimize or end those relationships, because nothing good is going to come of that. But when you're in really strong stage 2, 3, and 4 relationships, and you notice you've lost your warmth, and you notice I'm not making eye contact, I'm not smiling, I don't feel happy to see this person, just stop and ask yourself, is there some unresolved conflict? And if so, I need just practice telling the person, hey, I think there's something that would be really helpful for me if we talked about this. Simple steps. Practice, practice, practice. That's what Heart Tools is all about.